In the news, the Fast and Furious franchise is getting a spin-off film for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jason Statham. It's set for release July of 2019. At present, Chris Morgan is penning the script. No director has been announced as of yet. So this makes sense, because Chris Morgan has been around for a long time. He's been writing these scripts since Tokyo Drift, which was forever ago. And then he was the screenwriter for the movie Wanted. So the guy has got a pretty good pedigree as far as like writing for action goes. And since he's already familiar with this franchise and he's familiar with these characters, it makes sense why they would still want him to continue forward, just kind of writing and building out this universe, because everyone seems to be about shared universes, trying to take what works and then build out to even more franchise spin-offs as well. And we're even seeing that in the DCEU, or the DC film slate, with this new Joker origin, which we'll talk about later. But it's not surprising that they would want him back, to be honest, because he's already familiar with the characters. He knows how to write for them. He knows how to write the stories, and what they like to see from these films. No surprise that he's staying on. However, I am a little surprised that they're doing spin-off films for just The Rock and Jason Statham. Now, if you go back and you read my review on Bernansky's blog about the last Fast and Furious film, it felt like two different movies were happening at the same time. You had the movie that Vin Diesel was in, and then you had the movie that The Rock and Jason Statham were in, and it was very different. So, and it almost looked different too, the way the film was shot. You know, money talks, everything else walks. And if they can make Googles and Googles of cash from this franchise with these two action stars, I guess it does make sense as to why they would want this spin-off. Sony announced that 50 Shades of Grey writer Kelly Marcel is penning the latest script for the Spider-Man spin-off film Venom, starring Tom Hardy, with Ruben Fleischer set to direct. So this news story actually broke on Twitter by Variety reporter Justin Kroll. He tweeted it out, and that's when the world went, whoa. So she has written other things beyond just 50 Shades. She did write Saving Mr. Banks, which is a very charming film. It's about Walt Disney. If you haven't seen it, definitely recommend you check that out. It's a very good film. But she's known for 50 Shades, and that movie was not well written. The dialogue is bad. It's geared for the young adult audience, which means you don't really have to have a lot of in-depth characters. You just need to get the emotions and the point across. I don't understand why that's the route Sony would want to go when they're already in a curious predicament with the Venom standalone film already by itself. So if you aren't familiar with the Venom storyline, Venom is an alien life form that takes over Spider-Man. Spider-Man eventually realizes he's got to get rid of this life form, and when he does that, the alien life form gets very mad at Spider-Man, wants to exact revenge, finds another host body to take over, and then Venom is born. And Venom is a very dangerous, Venom eats people. Like, he's very crazy. He's giant mouth. I'm sure you've seen, a photo. You may not even realize it was Venom, but I'm sure that you've seen Venom, especially the black shirt with the white spider. Like, it's a very popular character, but its origins are so rooted in the Spider-Man mythos that Sony creating this story apart from Spider-Man was already a curious decision. So you already have this confusion set up with the people who know the origins of the story of Venom and Spider-Man and how they're tied together, and you're saying we're not going to do that, we're going to do something different, which is confusing. Then you bring on a writer who has written for 50 Shades, which was not a good movie and has very poor dialogue and everything else. So I really don't understand the direction that Sony's going with this film. I mean, you have Riz Ahmed is going to be in this film. Tom Hardy is going to be in this film. Like, you've got really talented people coming on board, but then you give us this news that you're doing this weird origin. You give us this news that you're bringing on this writer who's most well known for 50 Shades. So I don't understand why they would keep stacking questionable decision upon questionable decision for this film. I mean, you've got one of the most popular Spider-Man villains of all time, and you're just going this very odd direction. Now, we haven't seen any footage, obviously. We don't really have a synopsis for the film, so this is all very early stages. And all of my concerns and all of my curiosities could be quelled, right, by the time we get closer and closer and trailers are released and everything else. It is going to be rated R, so I'm sure it's going to be hyper violent, which I'm fine with. But I just don't I just don't know what to expect anymore with this film because there's been so many curious decisions. It doesn't leave me with a lot of confidence, and I just want some bit of news to pop off that is confirmed awesomeness so I can give it a high five and I can get on with my day. Brett Ratner is working on a Hugh Hefner biopic, and Jared Leto is cast to play Hefner. So this story has me split. I'm 50-50 on it. I'm 50% like, this is great because Jared Leto's a phenomenal actor. 50% of me is like, why would you do this? And that's hire Brett Ratner to direct this film. So when Rat Pack Entertainment put a bid in, that's Brett Ratner's entertainment company, when he put the bid in for the life rights to the story, he won out and now he gets to make this film. The curious, and it doesn't surprise me that they would want to make the film because Hugh Hefner, say what you will about his business, he is a true American success story and he is a celebrated, successfully self-made businessman. So there is all of that, and for decades upon decades, Hugh Hefner built an empire for entertainment, and I understand why people would want to make a film about this guy's life. I just am curious as to why we're going to get the Brett Ratner version of his life. Brett Ratner, if you aren't familiar with the name, you are familiar with the movies. He directed Rush Hour 3, which was okay. He directed X-Men The Last Stand, which almost ruined did ruin the franchise for a little while, but it almost single-handedly ruined the X-Men franchise with Fox, because X-Men The Last Stand was terrible. After that, he did Tower Heist, which I didn't see, but I read about, and it got terrible reviews on that. Not a very celebrated film from what I remember. And then he also did Hercules with The Rock, which was an abysmal film. Now, if you like sitting down and watching really celebrated bad films of like action and history, check out Hercules on like a Sunday afternoon or something. If you're just lazy Sunday on the couch, check that film out. It's gloriously bad. But I don't understand why we have to get the Brett Ratner version of this man's life, of Hugh Hefner's life. Now you add Jared Leto, and Jared Leto for the most part seems to be a method actor from what I've gathered. The guy, when he was doing Joker, he was like doing weird and sending weird things to the cast and crew as the Joker. For Blade Runner 2049, he plays a character who's blind, so he was wearing contact lenses that made him blind. This is all stuff that we hear about. And so this guy really gets into his character. And he's a phenomenal actor. So to hear that he is going to be doing the role of Hugh Hefner, I just kind of sat back and smiled because I was like, well, that should be fun for him if he, because as much as he gets into these characters, this sounds like for someone who really gets into their role and method acts, like sitting down to method act the life of Hugh Hefner and to get inside Hefner's mind and try and experience what he experienced but on screen. I definitely see the draw for why Jared Leto would want to play this iconic man. I'm excited to see what Jared Leto brings. I'm not excited to see what Brett Ratner brings. Geoff Johns shoots down the rumor that the DC films are not connected. In a tweet, he confirmed that the films are connected. The slate of films currently on the table for Warner Bros. DC are Justice League, Aquaman, Flash, Wonder Woman 2, Shazam, Cyborg, The Green Lantern Corps, Nightwing, and Batgirl, with a possible Scorsese Joker origin story. So if you follow, all of the chatter and everything else like I do, you are not surprised by this story. You may have been surprised when that rumor dropped that the films were going to go a separate direction and they weren't going to be connected, because Aquaman is coming out and that ties into Justice League somehow. And then Wonder Woman 2 is going to tie in, and then Wonder Woman's also going to be in the Flash movie. So like there's this weird rumor that dropped that like all of a sudden the DC films weren't going to be connected and they were just going to do their own thing. So it was nice that Geoff Johns came out and was like, no. They're all still, they're all still connected. We're all still telling the story. But I think what everybody misinterpreted that freaked out on the internet, not everybody in general, but the people who freaked out, I think they misinterpreted it, because I think it was like these aren't going to be completely reliant on each other. So you're not going to have a Wonder Woman film that ties in directly with like, the Aquaman movie, and like you've got to pay attention for all the Easter eggs that are going to be in the Aquaman movie, because that'll explain something in the Flash. I think what they were saying is like, look, we're just going to make our movies. and then we're gonna have a Justice League film, and then that's gonna be your you can just go in and enjoy the film for what the film is, and you don't have to worry about like, oh my goodness, did you see that Easter egg? Like, oh, that's gonna be, I wonder how that's gonna. I think they're just like, oh look, pump the brakes. We're making our movies, and you guys are gonna get to enjoy them, and you won't have to stress over every tiny thing because we're just making the movies. And it's going to be a fun time for everybody at the theater. And I say that because of Geoff Johns' comments where he's like, no, they're still connected, but we're just making our films. So I'm happy to know that these films that are coming out are going to be connected, but they're not going to be completely reliant on each other to tell the stories. And then we have this Scorsese film with the Joker origin story, which is, I'm assuming, because we really don't know anything about it, is going to be a completely separate Elseworld kind of story that lives in its own little box and does its own little thing, and we'll get to enjoy that too. So we'll have to wait and see on that. I'm happy that he came out and clarified it so that we know, again, we get to go in and just enjoy these films, and we don't have to stress about it because they're just going to be fun times at the movies, crunching down on popcorn and drinking iced tea. Honorable mentions this week: Universal has pulled the Bride of Frankenstein remake from their film slate. Justice League, Pacific Rim 2, and Roman J. Israel Esquire have released new trailers. Director Gore Verbinski is in talks to direct the Gambit movie starring Channing Tatum. Kate Winslet has been cast in Avatar 2. All right, and that pretty much wraps it up for the news this week. There's a lot of news that happened over the course of the week, plus we had New York Comic Con. So if there was something that dropped that we didn't cover on this show, as always, throw it in the comments below. Because like I said, you're going to get a lot of news from these conventions, New York Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con. There's always a lot of news that drops at this stuff. So we can't get to it all on every show. So if we missed anything that you were super excited about or you were confused about and you'd like to hear my opinion on it, that's what the comment section's for. Sound off down there and we can keep the conversation going. I'm still excited about Netflix dropping Punisher. We haven't received the official release date for that yet. They actually canceled the panel at New York Comic Con because of recent events that happened in real life back in Las Vegas. They wanted to be sensitive to that because this show will be hyper-violent. So I completely get why they pulled the panel and switched things around, but I'm still excited for the show on Netflix, and I still would like to get the release date. So sound off below in the comments if anything popped off that you're excited about or you would like my opinion on that we did not cover today.